Susan Lindauer is with us. Extreme Prejudice is her book. You can get that anywhere. And look, I mean, Susan is anti-war. That's one of the things. One of the reasons she wants this information to get out is to try to end this madness and show people and teach them a little bit about false flag terrorism. So she is one of our great whistleblowers. You can agree with her or not. That has really nothing to do with any of this. Susan, what I want to do here is I want to finish up with 9/11. I want to go to how you were busted under the Patriot Act and detained, and why, and who did that. A little bit about Colin Powell in Iraq, and then we've got to get you out of here. So we got about 10 minutes to try to get through all of that. I'm just going to let you. Here's the fishing line. Go.
Okay. Okay. A lot of people say, well, you know, we don't believe in the hijackings. We believe in the detonation theory. Well, I want you to know that I believe that both of them happened. I'm absolutely the hijackings occurred. There were airplane parts found on the ground. Yes, that did happen. But what has been missing is the understanding that we did have advanced knowledge of the attack, and they had already made a decision of what would happen to Iraq. Before 9/11 ever happened, they had already decided to go to war. And therefore, that was the incentive for deliberate command negligence. We know that NORAD was not activated, forewarned of the potential threat to U.S. sovereign territory. Yeah. Because of the drills. We know that they failed to put, anti-machine gun, anti-aircraft batteries on top of the World Trade Center. There are things that were very simple to do that were not done. And it was deliberate command negligence. That is the very important thing. And the motivation, people say to me, well, you cannot have it. It's just 2 million to 1. It's impossible to have an airplane attack and a detonation coincided to the same day. No, it's not. Because if they know in advance that it's going to happen, and then they know approximately the date that it's going to happen, and then they know the outcome of the attack. What they knew was this would be an orphan team that did it, and that went in, and they knew that there was going to be an Arab attack, so they wanted to make sure that it had maximum devastating consequences so that they could secure their real goal, which was the war in Iraq.
It sounds like, in a way, you're giving us a let it happen on purpose with extra emphasis, rather than they made it all happen on purpose. Did you have a...
Well, they did make it all happen on purpose. They both. The Arabs they already knew the Arabs were going to do it, but they probably also had studied the Arabs, and they knew that they were kind of clowns. They weren't really good terrorists. They weren't really good Muslims. What if they didn't do very much damage? Most terrorist attacks, if you look at the first World Trade Center attack in 93 and the USS Cole bombing in October 2000, those had minimal damage. There were 5 people who died in the first World Trade Center attack. Once the smoke clears and you have the sensation of, oh my God, there was an attack on the World Trade Center, very little actually happens. Same with the USS Cole. 12 people died. Yes, it was a big deal. It was like a huge big deal. However, 12 people died. The USS Cole survived, okay? It wasn't blown to smithereens. There wasn't a nuclear bomb that went off.
And of worms, too. So 9/11, then it happens. What?
So then somebody had to make sure that 9/11 was going to go off with maximum force. That's why a team would have gone in. And I want to close with one last statement, sorry. I know from writing my book, while I was writing my book, I had a senior State Department official tell me that he had personally studied the janitorial services at the World Trade Center and activities in late August of 2001, and at 3 o'clock, after the janitorial services had left at approximately 2 to 2:30 in the morning, strange vans were arriving at the World Trade Center, and they were arriving at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and they were leaving at about 4:35, 5 o'clock in the morning, for about 10 days or 2 weeks. And he told me that he had personally studied the number of employees in the janitorial services. He knew where they lived. He knew the revenues for the company. He knew who owned the company. He had studied this at length. And he was convinced that those separate, he was convinced those were different vans that were not tied to janitorial services, and that they had entered the World Trade Center for the purpose of rigging explosives in the elevator shafts. And once it's rigged, it doesn't matter if the planes are attacked, if the building is attacked by the airplanes on the 9th or the 10th or the 11th or the 12th or the 13th, because once it's done, once it's in there, at whatever point the World Trade Center gets hit, you can have a controlled demolition, which brings the whole thing down. And then you have secured your ultimate goal of going to war with Iraq. And that is the key. You have to, the two things that have been missing from the 9/11 truth community are, one, the absolute fact that we absolutely knew about this attack. There is no question. If any politician ever tells you that we didn't know, he's a liar or a fool. Secondly, they had already made the decision to go to war with Iraq before this ever happened. And so that was the motivation.
As I told
Remember,
you
never have a crime, you never have a crime without a motive.
The Project for New American Century, which kind of starts spelling this out, we have 10 years of history at least preceding this, and then we have Donald Rumsfeld and FOIA requests talking to his aide, Stephen Camboni, that sweep it all up, go massive. Okay, blame this on Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein no matter what. This is just minutes after the so-called attack on the Pentagon. So, I mean, this is all out in the open. We know that through FOIA requests. We have about 3 minutes here, so spend a little time on. You went to you have all this information.
The reason you don't know about me until now. The reason you don't know about me until now is that I was arrested back in 2004, and I was held under indictment for 5 years and gagged and locked up in prison on a Texas military base, and my reputation was destroyed. In 5 years, I never had a trial. I was never allowed to have, in 5 years of indictment, I was allowed one morning of testimony by two witnesses. One was a former congressional chief of staff, and the other was a university professor who testified that I had been a U.S. intelligence asset, and secondly, that I had warned about 9/11. And in one morning of testimony with two witnesses, I slammed it out of the ballpark. And we were swinging for the fences, and we got it. But if it was not for that testimony and their truth-telling, this story would have been lost forever, because the government fought so hard. They pulled every dirty trick in the book to stop you from ever knowing the truth. So please do read this book, because this is very important stuff. There's a lot more that we haven't even talked about, like Iraq's efforts to contribute to the 9/11 investigation, which you don't even know about. We've never even talked about this stuff, because it just goes so much bigger than what you're expecting.
Well, and the fact is, like Afghanistan, Iraq was trying to, they didn't want to be bombed back into the Stone Age. They didn't have any weapons of mass destruction. Largely, that was a bluff, as we found out. They were working in every capacity to make deals, to cooperate fully with every contention of the Bush administration and the Clinton administration before it. Hugh Shelton just came out. General Hugh Shelton, he wrote a book and said they were sitting around the table in the Clinton administration, thinking about how they could shoot down a spy plane and blame it on Saddam Hussein. I mean, they've just been trying to do this over and over again. Back in the Gulf War, Susan, as you probably know, and we know now through April Gillespie, that they gave permission for Saddam Hussein to attack Kuwait, and then went in and cleaned up the mess. They were set up royally for this. But the alternative information that you have in your book that you can talk about extensively working in this chain of command, in this compartmentalized chain of command here, is that Iraq did everything they could to avoid that war. Not that we heard that on the mainstream media, and that this all
never.
The money, the death, the fact that we're turning people into terrorists to hate us now because we've been torturing their children for information, all of this could have been avoided had we just done business as usual. But for whatever reason, I think a lot of this has to do with Babylon, and this is their little homeland over there. The fact that they had these oil contracts, the fact that China was moving into their territory, something had to be done, and eventually when this all comes out, they'll tell us that they did this for our benefit so we don't have $20 a gallon oil and China doesn't take over the world. I've heard that, and I just can't wait for them to finally start admitting this, Susan Lindauer.
A little more